It's not an enormous site, and there's probably, I don't know the exact portion of it that will be developable, but it's a really inspiring site because it's right in town. The bus goes right by there as well. Totally walkable and really quite beautiful at the top of the hill and surrounded by trees, as you can see there. So, I'm almost done. Just giving you a little bit of an overview of what we would love to accomplish this year. So sort of seeing where we've been, how far we've gotten. This year, if we can get our committees solidified to get like just a little bit more resources and expertise behind some of the momentum here, and secure some pre-development funding, likely through a grant. There's a series that we would be applicable for. Once we got that, we could hire a project coordinator that can be like focused on this at least part-time every day, not just relying on volunteer resources to help keep the ball rolling. Solidify some of our local partners and how the vision would relate to the site that we have in mind, and write like a solid business plan which proves that it's a feasible, financially feasible project. We'd make a conditional purchase of the site, to go through the development application process with the town, and then start to, like, once we're at that point, we can start to, you know, accept investment and set our membership goals. So that's definitely in the realm of possibility for this year. Certainly we won't be digging or get approval for the development for some time yet, but that's sort of the vision for this year. And so maybe what we can do at this point, now that everyone's in the room, I'll do a quick little introduction of sort of the core team members, and then we can do a round of introductions of the room, and you guys can tell us a little bit about like where your interests are, what you bring to the table in terms of background or interests or passions that would relate to the project. And then we'll talk a little bit more about these different committees, okay? Sound good? And I think this is probably a decent time too, if you have a question. As we're doing the round, you can use that moment either to tell us a little bit about yourself and or pose a question about next steps, where we're going, okay? So, just from the board, I'll introduce Bob because I've sort of hinted at his entrance as he came in. This is Bob Spencer. He's a long-time founding member, is that right? Founding member of the Beach Community Energy Cooperative?
Yeah, actually, I think my daughter would be counted. In grade 1, she said, "Daddy, what are we doing about the environment?" So probably she's the founding person, and then she kind of pushed me to Yuri's garage and other people. So in 2008, in senior kindergarten, to give the daughter the credit.
Awesome, thank you. And Graham Bland, right in front of him, I'm sure you all know, but I'll let you introduce yourself.
No, I'm here because probably the same kind of themes that Bob mentions. You've probably heard, she's got her own acronym now, Alexandra Ocasio-Cortez, AOC. You've probably heard her saying, "What am I going to say to my great-grandchildren?" I think she's borrowing from a poem. And I love poetry because the poets are so honest. It's 3:23 in the morning and I'm awake because my great-great-grandchildren won't let me sleep. My great-great-grandchildren ask me in dreams, "What did you do while the planet was plundered? What did you do when the earth was unraveling? Surely you did something when the seasons started failing as the mammals, reptiles, birds were all dying. Did you fill the streets with protests when democracy was stolen? What did you do once you knew?" And I think I'm here because my great-great-grandchildren need me to be here. What I heard last week, reading a Guardian article, was that my great-great-grandchildren are going to need to occupy 1/10 the carbon footprint that I occupy if this world is going to be sustainable. And this is one vision that I think might get us in that direction. So that's why I'm here.
Thank you, Graham, for such eloquence. And so Zoe Berlin has also been a very dedicated board member and director.
Yeah, I'm here similar to Bob. I have children and I'm looking at them and saying, how can I give you hope that means something? And as Greta Thunberg would say, hope only follows action. And regardless of what the political future benefits for us. I believe that as a group, if we're mobilized together and we have a binding vision, that we can put technology that we know and have at our fingertips to work. And the cooperative model is a perfect model for that because it allows us as individuals to combine our power, to combine our resources, and acquire meaningful assets that will serve us and the community well into the future. So that's why I'm here.
Thank you. So, and I apologize, I'm notorious for not actually introducing myself. I know most of you already, but I'm Kelsey Carrier, and I spent a lot of time protesting and involved in activism and got sick of banging my head against the doors of politicians who didn't listen, and eventually ended up going back to school for urban planning. I'm very interested in design and spaces and designing for sustainability, and this is a really exciting way to take a whole series of both community needs and global needs and community passions and turn it into something that's actually going to make a difference for people's work in the community and for housing options for decades and decades to come. So that's why I'm really excited about being involved in this project. And maybe we can just do like a little zigzag like that of introductions. Does that sound good? And let us know a little bit about you.
Okay, I'm Andrew Miller, and in a very strange way, I feel like I've been training my whole life for this moment. No joke. Every aspect of the initial plan and the future plan, I have experience in all those except the circus college, which I'd love to try. But so I've been a social entrepreneur. I've started and run not-for-profits and fundraised and built cafe, social enterprise with youth, mobile. I've built affordable housing, shipping container housing, and I live in one. And that I've worked on as an off-grid system. So as well, background in organic farming, and I've apprenticed in certified organic farms, and part of my house is a greenhouse, so I know living with greenhouses is very important for this neck of the woods. It's bizarre. I could go on, but I'm so excited to be here. And when it came up, I would love to throw my hat in the ring to be part of the project management. And what Zoe, what you're saying is too about a team is I've been since my past not-for-profit and how the rise and fall of it. I've been waiting for a new team. So it's like, and I'm realizing just how important that is to combine all of our skills. So, and I feel really blessed to be here. So, thank you.
Awesome, thank you.
Brody McGroar, was born and bred in Owen Sound. I've experienced firsthand the difficulties of trying to find an affordable, nice space in town, as well as the other places that I've lived. And I think a project like this is a good way, even if I can't take advantage of it directly myself, hopefully family or friends at some point will be able to kind of step in and enjoy and promote this sort of thing in the future. I'm a maker, I'm an artist, I like to create things, and I've always had a penchant for creating functional things that look beautiful, and this to me, this is that perfect opportunity in a larger scale, so that's why I'm here.
Awesome. I'm not remotely doubting that we've got the skills to pull this off in this room already, so thank you guys. Do you want to jump in, Lee?
My name is Lee Grigg. I've lived here for 9 years, and I'm a friend of Kelsey Graham's, a neighbor in Oxman, but I'm also a career volunteer. Started a nonprofit, worked in project management, but I'm a team player as well. I just like to see things get done. I'll take whatever role, and I guess my motivation, and I bring some sponsorship and sales background, but also my main motivation is progressively, my wife and I have just been and dads and stuff and the friends and trying to lead by example of being low impact. But I guess we're just looking to make that next step to justify our existence on this planet to our kids as well. So maybe not our great grandchildren, just focus on our kids at the moment, because there'll be enough to worry about when they get older as well.
Nice. Would you like to jump in here? We'll do a little.
I'm Anne, and I'm here to, as a friend of my neighbors. It's a very interesting subject. I'd be interested to hear the role of residents within the community living model. I don't mean just managing green spaces, but to have an active role in the support of the community, all on a volunteer basis. I don't know if you're familiar with any of these models in Toronto, but I would recommend investigating the Bain cooperative apartment complex, people, yes,
Okay.
where the residents do everything from managing the garbage and planting gardens, holding all kinds of meetings, whether it's the newsletter or like myself, who will mentor groups of mentally ill people and break the silence with them. All yoga, children's support, educational support, English as a second language, all of that is volunteer basis.
Very cool, thank you. Yeah, and when the project has been designed from the very beginning to incorporate such cooperative structures.
So they own the place where they live, much more than I'd like to hear how they live.
Yeah, that's definitely part of the vision. Thank you.
My name's Carrie, and I had never heard of this sort of plan or hope for the future before. Well, just 2 or 3 days ago, Logan sent me something on Facebook about it. But I'm very intrigued with the community living aspect of it. We both belong to a meditation group, and so it's that part of it is especially attractive to me. My background, what I could offer, I don't know. I was a photographer past lives, and I now work for 2 agricultural organizations in a sort of admin position, like kind of promotional writing, social media, sort of doing sort of everything for them. I'm the only employee for both, so I don't know what I could offer, but I'd be happy to help with whatever.
Amazing, thank you.
Oh, I'm Logan. I'm just gonna do a quick presentation over here. So I just wanted to kind of add a bit of a spiritual element to it, and in that sense, like many faiths around the world have had various prophecies of kind of an age of peace or a new earth coming along. So, for example, I also wanted to add Jeweni Diwaga, which is Ojibwe for let us have sympathy, compassion, and unconditional love for each other. And based on the research of various hypnotherapists, they have found that there was kind of a split futures. So in this book, there were thousands of lives, thousands of people were interviewed and progressed into the future. And they found that there was a pattern of basically 2 different kinds of lives that people could have in the future. One was kind of termed the old earth, where everything was ruined in terms of the ecology, and everyone had to live in a dome, and they couldn't breathe the air, and most people died of lung complications. And the other option was the new earth, and the new earth is just full of greenery, and there's lots of intentional communities, and there were people wearing robes, and but they also had technology, and so they had spaceships as well as while they were living in forests and had very nice homes. And Dolores Cannon over here, who also did hypnotherapy and found the same visions through her subjects. And so she found that what it is, it's kind of like an alternate universe split where the string theory or multidimensional models of creation are correct in terms of where there's multiple dimensions of time. And so you just have to tune into it with your mind. And then, so if you just think about the new earth and talk about the new earth and, act towards it, then you will experience it. And one of the key things is forgiveness and compassion for all beings. That's why I mentioned Joe when you want that. And so with this project, Glassworks, we can definitely do it. And my vision with it is land share. So basically, every person could have kind of their own slice, so that they could support themselves and have their own forest garden that also creates wilderness habitat. And we can also have the central community location where we could either live or work and play. Because the United Nations says that anyone that does not have land to grow their own food is in a state of absolute poverty. So by giving that option as a kind of a cheap thing, like $2,000 down and $75 a month, you could have half an acre to grow all the food that you need.
Mm-hmm. Thank you. And I think like the land trust is kind of part of one of these governance models that we can discuss in the governance committee, just because there's so many different layers to the cooperative in terms of growing food and car shares and how group decisions are made. So I think that will fit really nicely into that group conversation afterwards. Would you like to say hello?
I'm Michelle. This is Axel. I've done everything from graphic design to party planning to party decorating to bartending to serving. I went to school to be a chef, and I've done childcare and housekeeping as well. And as somebody who's dealt with a lot of the slumlords in town, I know what it's like to have to deal with the high housing and then not have anything done about it. So I lived downtown for a number of years, so I know what it's like.
Oh my gosh, thank you so much for being here. You've got a sweet baby. And party planning, I have personally found that it translates perfectly to project planning.
Yes.
It's just big picture, big vision, and then figuring out all the details.
Yeah.
You're hired. All right, let's jump back to you.
Thank you. My name is Peter. I joined the St. George's congregation this morning service where I heard about this meeting this afternoon. I'm glad I came. It might be something I can participate in. I don't know. I don't have any skills that we talk about these things on the walls. I worked in a factory all my life, and I'm retired now. But I do have 2 grandchildren too, and even when I was thinking about my own children, I thought about how time was running out for them. But I never really had or chose a practical action, and so I remain with some fear and trepidation for the future, which I wouldn't have perhaps if I did take some action. So I'm just glad to be here and listen. Thank you.
Thank you so much. I'm glad you're inspired, and we will mine you for all your passions and skills and interests, because I know they're there. Saif, do you want to introduce yourself?
Sure. Hello, everyone. My name is Saif Rafali. I'm a student at the University of Toronto doing a master's in business administration. And I work for Nexus Consulting, which is the company that we've been putting together a financial model to assess the potential land acquisitions, what kind of return you get out of that, what kind of construction cost estimates, things like that. I was in the team. I can tell you more about it if you want. Beyond that, we've been involved in the project since 2017 initially. We did some research on market trends. Later on, 2018, did a feasibility study to talk about how there's a need for student housing. There's a need for affordable housing, obviously. We looked at what the competing land developments are in the area and what need particularly they address. They seem to be, some of them catered a little bit to elderly housing. And then beyond that, beyond the financial model, we can help with kind of assessing what mix you offer. So, if you're focused more on affordable housing, what that means financially, and if you're focused more on, student housing that needs, and yeah, hopefully help going forward in any investor-related assessments.
Awesome. And Safe,
anything else.
yeah, and Safe has a short presentation that
Yes.
he wants to share, and we'll do that right before we break out into the committees, okay? And then
Yeah.
that'll be a nice segue for people that are going to start thinking about the financial wing of things. About, yeah, just to kind of help shape that conversation and get people excited about funding and financial committee, because just saying those words on a committee might not spark your imagination, but Safe will.
As interesting as possible.
All right, my dear.
Oh, sorry. Hi, I'm Janet Schwan. Really glad to be here. And Graham actually spoke very eloquently to the reasons that I would be here, so I won't repeat that unless you wanted to. Anyway, I've spent 30 years, probably longer, long time in housing. Managing housing, nonprofits, buying land, having big digs, Toronto here, a lot of different places, and that's one of the reasons I'm here, is I'm very keen on housing any type.
Excellent. And bring a lot of expertise, so thank you. Thank you so much.
Well, I'm Bernie Weber. I've been a secondary school teacher, and one of the things that I learned as a secondary school teacher was that teachers are misnamed. They should be learning assistants, because you cannot teach anyone anything, but you can help them learn. I spent, after my high school teaching career, I spent 27 years in the senior levels of the Ontario government. I spent 10 additional years in the senior levels of property and casualty insurance. But all I can tell you, and several charitable organizations where because I couldn't do anything, they put me in leadership roles. But to go back to what I learned in my days in secondary schools, I'm here to learn.
Excellent. Thank you.
I'm Linda Thorne. Currently, right now, I live in Wyerton, and I'm advertising manager for Boomers Magazine. But I've always been involved in housing, and I'm not a protester. I'm kind of like, I like being innovative. So back in the 70s, when I lived in Toronto, I lived about 4 years in school. And that's where before Kelsey was born. Kelsey's my daughter. And so we moved up to Ireland, and we renovated an 1892 barn in the Pass of Solar. And we did a book about it called Solar Houses for a Cold Climate. So I guess I've always had an inclination to be part of something that was looking at the big picture, the world in general. How are we going to sustain things for our children? And I'm happy to see that my children are grown up, they're very involved in that too. So I like this project of Glassworks because it's multi-generational, and it really is looking at all aspects. When you're looking at these cardboard groups you can join, it doesn't matter whether you have expertise or not. You just need to give your ideas and what you think, and all of those ideas I'm sure will be very helpful. Thanks.
Thank you.
I'm Graham Dorfman. I'm Kelsey's partner.
He defies titles.
My history is in the trades. I have had history in environmental building, things like that. But I like being in rooms with people that are passionate about things, and I like being here and hearing people that are excited about projects. And
Thank you.
And my name's John Corley. And whenever I'm asked what skills I bring, I can never think of anything. I've been in the area for about 30 years. I work for community living. I was a carpenter's assistant for a year and a half, so I can pretty much hammer anything together. And I'm great at doing dishes. And I'm your go-to person if you've got a corner job that needs to be done. So.
Head contractor.
I have enthusiasm. So. Good genes. This is my son. As you can tell.
Thank you so much. Last but not least.
I'm Paige Jolly, and I'm a longtime lover of planet Earth and all its creatures, so I'm here to learn and help in any way I can.
Awesome. Succinct. So thank you guys so much. I know that was kind of like a long process going through the room. I was going to save it until we broke into the committees, but I'm so glad to get to know a little bit more about each of you, especially the ones that I haven't met before. So it's exciting. Like you can tell that we have like such a great, like a breadth of resources already right here in this one room. Not counting, the people from our board and some of the directors. So Paul Connolly I should introduce, he has a long history in community housing development. He's one of our founding directors, as well as Yuri Skopek. These folks are both involved in the Beach Community Energy Cooperative down in Toronto, but have sort of thrown their decades of expertise behind this project as well, and are there sort of as advisors. For every step of the process, Yuri has a background in planning and architecture and environmental consulting. And we also have Sue, who's not here today. I'm sure a lot of you know Sue Sagan from Owen Sound. She's a community organizer and environmental educator, very passionate and very good at organizing ideas, and will continue to play a fantastic role in facilitation of the whole process. Like you don't have to know how to how to do architectural drawings or how to fill out legal forms, but like a lot of this process is actually conversations and helping pull ideas together and like solidifying a vision or even summing up a conversation. That is like as valuable a skill as swinging a hammer or, filling out our legal paperwork. So I feel like we've got a really cool set of skills with us already. This is just sort of a rough vision of how all these various sort of clusters of interests and skills and passions and experience sort of fit together into these 4 different sort of committees or interest areas. So the one is about communications and partnership development. One is about, why don't I explain them? I'll go over them quickly and then I'll explain them each in a slide. The governance model, a little bit about like how the decision-making processes work. There's site planning and system design, so that's getting into like the physicality of the site, how to apply this vision to the land, looking at the site itself, and regulations associated with that, and then the energy systems and the water systems, the waste systems included in the site, and then funding and finance that could help sort out. Tell me if I should be using the microphone again too. The funding and finance that could cover everything from grant writing to the local investment community, getting that organized, to applying for our conventional funding and working out the business plan. So here's sort of like a breakdown of some of the things that we would tackle within each of these committees or interest groups. So communications and partnership development will work on growing the membership and committees, finding people with missing skill sets that don't happen to be in this room today, but that we're going to want on board, thinking, I know my coworker's husband, that's what he does, and I think he'd be interested in this project, and helping sort of expand that network, bringing skill sets of people that would be interested in supporting at this initial phase of the project, and also starting to think about who is the membership going to be down the road. If you're good at talking with people, this is a very useful skill set, chatting people up in the local coffee shop or whatever, because we are going to be working towards a phase in the not too distant future where we're going to be doing the full membership membership process, where people that think that they might be interested in investing in this project, in living in it down the road, we need talkers, we need community members to help talk it up. We also, kind of within that committee, will be kind of building more professional partnerships with local institutions, with the city, with the county. So people that, you know, are good at making a presentation, or that know people that know their networks, that could help us find the right people to help strengthen those kinds of partnerships within the city or within the government, or local institutions. Also fitting within this is like communications and writing. If you think you could write a killer grant or help with some of the research to get to that point, you want to do a better job than me in trying to let people know about meetings ahead of time, and you know, social media, and keeping, you know, choosing great stories, like points in the process to share. All that stuff is super helpful, and also working with the funding committee on grant writing. So the governance committee that we were talking about would look at different models, how this whole thing works, how it fits together. So what does this membership look like? When are people brought in? How much does it cost? What does that money go towards? How does that fit into the structure? What are the different layers of the co-op model? What are the logistics of how they work? You know, what's the governance structure? There's, you know, a little bit of like legalities associated with those kinds of decision makings, if you like to kind of geek out about that, or even just looking at other models that have worked or not worked in other places, and you like learning from those kinds of systems. If you're interested in how group decisions get made, or, you know, ways of facilitating conversations to be super productive, this is a committee for you. People that are also into like project management, helping set goals and milestones, and kind of help like pushing the project, next steps of the project vision along. I see that fitting into this sort of governance committee as well. And also people that are just like social visionaries, that they like seeing things come together, and they can sort of envision how to keep the people and the organizational structure and decision making moving in that direction. That's the committee for you. The funding and finance, like we said, is you're good at number crunching. This would involve the business plans, so Safe will talk a little bit more about the work that's been done so far, but we are going to have to continue to refine it and sort of looking at really specific scenarios for each site. And, you know, when we start looking at different numbers of units, or how tall are we allowed to build, or what materials are we using, to be able to help us crunch those numbers to make financially sustainable decisions on what we're actually going to build. Also within this group, there's like the social element of it, which is sort of helping build our local investment community. So there's people right here in Owen Sound with money that would like to invest it in meaningful projects, and really helping develop what that looks like in Owen Sound, and sort of help pitch this project to them, and, you know, organize the materials and the networking we need to grow that. And like I said with the Tapestry Community Capital, this whole idea of community bonds, sort of setting up, there's lots of decisions around what that looks like, and keeping our financial ducks in order, which is not my committee. I apologize. The fourth one is about the physicality of the site. So site planning and systems design. So looking both like at the physical site, the conditions of it, like how much of it is developable, what sort of regulations are tied to that site, how tall will we be able to build, that kind of thing. Being able to take this vision, this big vision of the things that we want to see incorporated into this project, and how do they fit on that site, and how do they fit together on that site, and starting to work towards like workable site plans and layouts and models that we can start to make some decisions about. Also looking at the different choices around sustainable and renewable energy choices, and systems design for dealing with wastewater, and like just different ways that the building and the sites and the rooms within it are laid out to facilitate the kind of community that we want to build. You know, everything from where is a shared storage space that we can all keep our gardening tools in that makes sense and is handy for everybody, to, you know, how do we deal with stormwater runoff on the site to make the best use of the fresh water that falls out of the sky so that we can use it on the site. All those kinds of systems thinking related to the physicality of the site, and the site selection was supposed to be the last word there. I apologize. So, just before we break out into the different committees, I wanted to give you guys an opportunity to ask, first of all, to say if you think there's something drastically missing in this sort of, I was trying to sort of compartmentalize the myriad of things that need to happen over the next several years to bring this project to fruition. Do you feel like there's anything drastically missing or something that you're super, super excited about that you have no idea where it would fit? So I'll just throw that out to the room.
I'm just wondering if SAFE's group has been with the project since 2017, maybe he should get his 5 minutes or 10 minutes soonish.
Yep, I wanted to do that right before we break out to the committee groups. I just wanted to give everyone an opportunity to see if we've even covered the kinds of things that you would be interested in participating in. Yeah.
So, question. The name Glassworks.
Yeah.
I don't make the connection. Like, what is it?
Yeah. So the name. I was going to offer Zoe to speak to it, but she stepped out. The name came from the initial site that sort of sparked this whole project that we were looking at, which was the old PPG factory site up there.
Right.
That one has since turned out to be not a great choice, but because of the inspiration that came out of that initial push, the name Glassworks came about and has kind of stuck. And people figured that down the road, maybe it would change, or maybe it would relate to some of the greenhouse structures on site, or it would take on a different meaning, but still be relevant. Yeah, no problem. Yeah.
I think the only group that's missing are the people who live in
Yeah.
your projects, and I think it would be nice to hear from them.
Yeah.
And that we could, I think you could benefit from seeing the diversity of needs, and that would only be described by people who need them.
Yeah.
So
Absolutely.
at the very early stage, there should be a committee group which is made up of future residents.
Absolutely. And I think for now, that might be part of this sort of governance idea of like, who's part of the decision making? How does that happen? And I mean, maybe we could do a show of hands in the room right now who, and like obviously no commitment, but envisions, maybe 5 years down the road, would like to live in a place like this, or has a family member that they would like this to be a possibility for. So
also,
you can see.
You might go to some of the city services and invite people. I'm just going to say like United Way, or,
Absolutely.
The Saugeen Ojibwe Nation Center, and
Yep.
from people who normally not come to a public meeting like this.
Absolutely. So we have had some really wonderful initial conversations with the folks from Wikwadong, from their housing department, and United Way would definitely fall under one of the folks that we would like to continue to develop partnerships with. Absolutely, absolutely. And so I think ultimately there will be more people wanting to live in this place than are in this room today. But I think there's also maybe I'll use the microphone again. But there are also people right here that would have similar interests. Obviously that would expand, and especially as we're starting to think about like what sort of scale of affordable housing are we talking, then there would probably be whole systems that fall into place with local partners figuring out, well, who would be the recipients of this affordable housing, and what is the best way to bring future residents into the decision making as early on as possible.
Yes, they should be here.
Yeah.
They should be from the ground, so that as you plan everything else, all your other committees, you don't forget.
Absolutely.
Who they're for.
Yeah.
These are all the reasons.
100% agreed, and I'm so glad you brought that up. And that's like something that will definitely be like both partnership development with organizations like the United Way and the governance conversation of how are we assuring that people who are meant to benefit from this project are part of the decision-making process. Yeah.
One thing I'd love to discuss, or I'll throw it as an option, in past projects that I've been involved in, with this, trying to share the vision of how to have the maximum benefit to the world as a whole through what we're doing, because this is special, this is unique. Not totally unique, there are groups like this happening, but the wisdom in this room, us coming together like this, to magnify the effects of this, I've been thinking about the open source software concept, open sourcing just right from the start, there's potential that we could either through video, audio, share the committees, even every meeting, put it out there. And I think maybe the easiest way is live streaming. Of course, for sure, out of respect, a lot of folks concerned about privacy and things like that. For me, I think the easiest, no editing needed, a camera or audio and live streaming it out there is a potential. I just would love to throw that out. And this way, perhaps, and of course, the plans, open sourcing all the plans, and so other communities could just download all of the work we've done and have a head start in their communities doing this. So, and in other ways, and even a further future chapter, having a committee that actually helps other communities directly, even fundraising, even, moving forward, perhaps.
Awesome. Thank you so much. That's great.
Just wanted to add, regarding the camera, if anyone doesn't want to be included in the footage, just come talk to me and I'll fuzz you out.
That's great. Thank you, Logan, for bringing that up. And yes, and you reminded me of something that I wanted to say too, that so far, all of the resources that we've been collecting, our minutes and everything, we've been keeping on a Google Drive. And so anyone that's interested in continuing to be involved to some degree in decision making, propelling this project forward, make sure that you did sign in and that we have your email address, because we can, as a first step internally, make all of our resources and everything available to everyone who's interested in helping to support the project. So that's kind of like first step of open source within the organization, but I just want to say make sure we've got your email address, and then after this meeting I'll make sure that you all have access to start to go through some of our resources and to compile some of the thoughts from each of the conversations that we'll have shortly. Sound good? Any other thoughts before I pass the mic over to Say?
Just a quick one. It's just that I'm really interested in the finance committee, but I know the governance committee has been recommended to me, and I don't know.
I think if you're interested in finance, you should jump on it.
Okay.
Not a lot of people have a passion for the number crunching that we need. I can put that one at the top of the list. Sorry. One more question and I'll pass to Safe.
A quick one.
Yeah.
How on earth would it be feasible to get the ducks in a row for the June deadline for one of the sites?
Good call. Yeah. Bob, do you want to speak to that better than me? I've just been wrapping my head around, is it even possible? And I think we have a month, almost 3 weeks. It requires a seed funding application as well, right?
No, it just requires money.
And a conditional offer?
Yeah. Yeah, that's a big question. That's why I put down funding, is being interested in funding. If there's no feasibility for coming up with the required school board baseline deposit, then we can't make a conditional offer. They know their building, which was built, I think one part of it in 1909 and the last part in the 70s, has tons of asbestos in it. So they know that the average developer is not going to offer, because they have to take the building down or encapsulate the building. So it's not an easy offer. So probably we're looking at relatively small deposit and conditional offer with a 10-page list of things that need to be given by the owner to the conditional offeree. And those, by the way, those are mechanically very easy to do. It's a question of it's too big. Humble view, having been involved in about 30 of these, it's very early for this group. So it would really look around the room. Is there anybody who's got $50,000 in their pocket?
5,000. We could all 10 of us with $5,000.
Yeah, I'll throw in 2,500. Paul will throw in 2,500. Yuri will throw in 2,500. I mean, that's another way to do it. And because it actually goes into a deposit check, you basically have to have a certifiable check. And then it's the school board that then says, yeah, we're sort of interested in the community aspect. And oh, and by the way, they offer 10% more than the guy. They will go for a little bit or high bit. So, but it is very quick. So I'm hoping that there will be somebody, thank you, Mr. Person in the green. I'm hoping there's someone else who will be willing to sit, because that's one of the first issues, is can we do something quickly? And when we found that there were multi-million dollars worth of cleanup involved in the PPG site, because basically Beach was going to hold it as a land trust. Now, people got organized within affordable housing more, but we just couldn't take the risk of possibly getting over to $5 to $10 million of cleanup. So, yeah, it's possible. Anything's possible. But I would say, without continuing to beat this horse, it's really quick. I mean, beginning of June, I think the viewing is May 13th. Is that?
Yeah, there's one on the 9th and one on the 16th, I think. Yeah.
So there's 2 viewings, but you won't see the asbestos when you view. So somebody should go to the view. Answer. So we should definitely look.
I've been there. I've already been there. I've done work there. I've done work with the school board. And
how's it work? My dad died of asbestosis.
Oh, really?
He's a school board employee, so.
Oh my gosh.
We do remediate, yeah. We've done a lot of remediation at the other schools, but it's just, this is another bizarre coincidence that I was just there a few months ago. So the property is incredible, and the ravines and all that, but it's for sure it can be done. It can definitely be done. Once you get the asbestos out, you could potentially even keep the main floor and build up on top of it.
Okay.
So
I ask you the question: is Mr. Hope there and Mr. Cynicism here? You joined the finance committee for a little while.
Yes.
And you prepared to write some small checks that you do get back when they turn the thing down. We got our check back onto the PPG site. We had to fight them for it. It cost us some legal fees. But
It sounds like that's a agenda item number 1 for
Yeah, absolutely. And I brought the forms from the site for the finance committee. So anyone that's interested in oh my gosh, could we actually pull this off by June 6th? Even if finance isn't your background, jump on that table when we sit down, and then you guys can report back in an hour and let us know when we go for it. All right. So unless there's any other pressing questions at this particular moment, what I'm going to do is pass the stage over to Safe to tell us a little bit about the work that's been done so far in terms of finance. And then what we'll do is maybe we'll get people excited about each of the committees to just grab one of the signs or cluster. People that are excited about taking the conversation outside in the sunshine, please do. And those that want to stay in here in the cool, calm shade, we'll do that. And then report back in at 3:30. So, Safe is coming up. If anyone needs to grab a coffee or anything, or you can save it until we break out into the committees. Zoe has made bagels and muffins. There's vegan options, there's fruit, there's cheese and crackers, there's yogurt. So get yourselves comfy, and I'll...
Should I bring my laptop?
So I have the one that you sent me the other day on here, if that's what...
I was going to say yes.
Yep.
On mine, I have the actual financial model, so I didn't want to spend too long, but I just want to show what decisions we make. So maybe I should bring mine. What do you think?
I think you can read the room as best as I. So if you think it's worth sharing with the whole room, or if you want to save that for the finance committee.
It's too amazing. There are no coincidences.
Yeah, for sure.
So then I can...
Yeah, I was just thinking of that, everything that's happened in my life before this moment has prepared me for this moment. Like last week, and you brought up almost the same idea.
I know, I have been waiting for this kind of a group to be happy, in this kind of project too. And I've actually been working on this type of project for years too, and I've got a few plans already written that want to contribute to that with some good financials. So
great.
Maybe we could get a good head start.
Yeah.
We might be able to put something together. But I'll probably be with the financial.
Yeah, me too. Yeah. I think we could pause this.
Here that people have already been starting to think about who they want to sit down and talk with, what's a committee that calls to them. So right after Safe's done, we'll jump into those groups. So I've heard lots of interesting conversations already, so exciting to have everybody. Awesome. Okay, do you want the microphone?
I don't know. Do I need the microphone?
Yeah.
Yes? Okay, I'll use the microphone.
Deafness.
Sure. All right, so what I'm trying to do is just make sure I have the model in front of me as I talk about this. All right, I'm with Nexus Consulting, as I said. We're a consulting management company based out of the University of Toronto. And we've been engaged with BCEC and Glassworks working on the financing aspect of the project. So far, just really quickly, 5-minute presentation. I'm going to talk about who we are, what the marketing fundamentals, the research that we did year before, what yielded, what the competing kind of land development projects are, and quickly move on to an update on the model discussion, just to see how that can inform, at least specifically, the financing table. And then lastly, what the next step needs to be in order to kind of get our ducks in a row. So as far as who we are, I touched on, we're basically not-for-profit oriented consulting firm. Personally, I have a background in structural engineering. I'm an engineer, went to the University of Toronto, and I worked on management of large infrastructure projects for 5 years. And now I'm doing consulting, so this kind of up my wheelhouse as well, funny enough. Very excited to be here. Okay, so in 2017, we did site evaluation. We looked at the trends, we identified undesirable features like, I mentioned earlier, student housing and things like that. We looked at, we developed a financial model that looks at kind of the attractiveness, so to speak, of a site based on the goals of Glassworks. So, you know, one of the Russell Brothers site doesn't have an existing structure the way the school does. So, you know, when we're talking about asbestos problem, maybe that doesn't exist for that specific site, but maybe the site itself needs maybe an additional environmental assessment. So, kind of site-specific conditions, incorporating those into the financial model in order to make a bit more of an educated assessment of what the finances of those models are, of those sites are. Beyond that, in terms of, aside from financing, we can help with putting together, we hope to help in putting together the marketing stuff for the investor decks. So kind of coming into the investors to say, this project, you know, has an expected rate of return of X percentage and what that means. And then maybe beyond making those decisions, what kind of financing we can get and what the financing costs associated with that would be. So really talk about the financing aspect of the project. In terms of competing land developments, there's 3 that we've looked at. One has their zoning amendment has been approved. You know, one of them, the application is on hold. They mostly focus on retirement long-term care residences, so they don't particularly address student or affordable housing, which is what some of the goals here are. And we touched on that. So what's next? Okay, so in terms of finances, I'll keep this as short as possible, and we'll talk about it at a specific table. But for finances, basically, we need to do a knowledge transfer. Ideally, I can explain the model that we put together at Nexus to the entity who's going to be, whoever the person is going to be using it here at Owen Sound, in order to just play with the numbers to figure out what it makes if I put 30 affordable housing units and 70 student housing units and maybe 10 units for sale. What does that mean? And if you change those percentages, there's basically, it automatically gives you what the rate of return is, and you can have kind of a target in mind on finding that balance between a sustainable project from an environmental perspective and one that is actually doable financially. So kind of seeing what works for you in that regard. And then beyond that, we can develop a marketing strategy. We can look at due diligence on the bidding process, anything like any of the stuff that comes in after that, including refining the model based on discussions with the architects, based on the geotechnical reports and all these things. We can definitely help out with. But for now, I think just the main takeaway is that we need to just decide internally soon enough, I guess, especially if we're going to the school site, is what the priorities are. Like, what do you care about most? And that really changes the financials of the sites, obviously. And that's just the timeline. It goes in line with what you talked about, so I don't think I need to explain the timeline again, but it's similar things. Hopefully looking to acquire the property this year, and then site design and construction to follow in the years after that. And that is all I have for today. Happy to have more detailed discussions about the model one-on-one or one-on-five or whatever works. Thank you.
Awesome, thank you so much. We don't have such professional introductions to each of the committees, unfortunately, but I think it's really great just to have a little bit of an overview and to have you at the table. So thank you so much for coming all the way from Toronto. So am I right in guessing that people that want to talk about finance and or the funding model and the Bayview School site, like potential imminent proposal, right in the center, at the back table here, people that are interested in the physicality of the site, systems design, sustainable models over here. Up in the front, we've got people that are interested in the communications, in partnership development, and then thank you page. And the far side is the governance model, so looking at the sort of internal structure of decision making. And I'm going to let you guys settle. Can I ask one question before you move? We've got an hour and 20 minutes together. Within your groups, you can decide if you want to go outside or whatever you want to do. But I want to just decide how much time you guys want to leave for like the group report back at the end. Do we want like half an hour, 20 minutes, 15 minutes, half an hour? Yeah. Okay. So then let's. Someone help me with the math there. We'll come back at 3:30.
Come back at quarter after.
3:15.
How about we come back?
3:15. Okay. So we'll take half an hour right now as a group, as the individual groups, and then we'll meet back at 3:15 to talk about sort of decisions that you've made or priorities that you've come to or what up to the surface. Yep.
So are we writing on these?
I'll bring around scrap paper. You're welcome to write on the boards. I'll bring around markers, pens, paper for everybody, and a few resources that might be useful to each group. All right. Thanks, guys.
Okay.